minute. Let's go. And we're going to start the Rotary Minute. We're going to start with Mr. Raymond Foster. I'll get to see you again this week.
That's right. My name is Raymond Foster. Glad to be here. I am the immediate past president of the Rotary Club, the Noon Rotary Club, and your Zoom master tonight. So we're also on Facebook Live and a bunch of stuff going on. So glad to be here tonight.
Love that. Wayne, you're up.
Hi, Wayne Schmidt. I'm a member of the Military Satellite Rotary and pleased to be here tonight.
Wonderful. Hey, tell your son Wayne I said hi, or
Tony?
I haven't seen him. Yeah, Tony, I haven't seen him in a while. Did you tell him?
All right,
I
I'll tell him to give you a call.
I drive by his office all the time, so tell him I said hi.
All right,
Thank
I'll
you.
see if we can get him at the kickoff too.
Oh, it'd be even better. There's one more person jumping on. Glenn, you're up.
My name is Glenn Johnson. I'm a charter member of the Satellite Rotary Club of Military Family Support.
Love it.
All right.
Bella, there we are. You're muted.
Isabella Foster, Secretary, Satellite Rotary Club, Military Family Support for 2 years now, and the Rotary baby.
The Rotary actual chairman. And Mrs. Sparks.
Hi there, Marilyn Sparks, Rotary member, Farmers Insurance agent, LA County Insurance Commissioner, San Dimas Chamber Ambassador, etc.
Perfect. Rita, are you there? Maybe. She's thinking about it.
Yes. Sorry, I just finished walking Cujo.
Fair enough.
Rita McGee, local probate estate planning attorney, chamber member, Rotary member, city senior citizen commissioner, etc.
Et cetera, et cetera. And Chantel.
Sorry, I just realized I had my camera off. Hi, everyone. I'm Chantel Ferlin Beckham. I'm a neuroscientist by training and have been with Cohen Veterans Bioscience for 7 years, and I lead all of our policy and advocacy programs.
Fantastic. And Mr. Frank Larkin, I will get to you in a minute. I didn't skip over you, but there's a different introduction for you. So with that said, we're going to jump into the welcome. I'm glad everyone here. It's been a good time off. God, what has it been, like 3 weeks to a month at this point? But I'm glad to be back in person. I can't wait to hear from Mr. Larkin tonight. Raymond does a phenomenal job always booking our people, so let's see what we have. With that said, I just so you know, Mr. Larkin, let's see, it's CVB Board of Directors and Veteran Advisory Council, Invisible Wounds, PTSD, and TBI among service members and first responders. I know you have a laundry list of things on there. I know that all our speakers like to give their own breakdown of who they are, so I will always leave it to you. But we all had a chance to read it already. So that said, go ahead, sir, you're up.
Hey, if you read it already, I'm not going to go over and cover old ground. I mean, a lot of folks here come from different perspectives, but really welcome the opportunity to talk about some of the things that are challenging our military and first responders today. Obviously, you know, that at the top of that list is the unconscionable number of suicides that we see within those ranks. You know, it's an epidemic within our society, and not just within the military and first responders, but, you know, unfortunately with our youth and others. You know, Cohen Veterans Bioscience is an organization. It's a nonprofit. Chantel can give you a little bit more of the background on it, but really focused on the research to try to find some of the answers that may lie beyond psychiatry and mental health, where, you know, we are starting to see in many of these cases a biological connection, whether it's trauma or, you know, some type of disease process that may be underlying some of the behaviors that we see in our veterans and first responders. You may or may not have heard the term invisible wounds, but it's really the signature injury that we've seen in a lot of our veterans, certainly coming out of the post 9/11 conflict, where we've had, you know, 20 plus years of persistent conflict. Never before have we had a period of conflict like that that has challenged our armed forces, let alone our own domestic, warriors, so to speak, our first responders. Certainly, that has become even more prominent with the period of COVID that, we've been passing through the past 3-4 years. One of I think the hallmark issues that we have with a lot of the folks that we come in contact with is that they're struggling to understand what's happened to them, or what is causing some of the situations that they find themselves in. They've had a period of service to this nation, men and women who have gone forward to protect us, preserve our way of life, and they come home often burdened with certain injuries that in some cases we can see. Unfortunately, this war has been very graphic in nature, especially with the improvised explosive devices, where we have seen disfiguring wounds, we've seen amputations and so forth, which are very visible. But what is really even more challenging, and admittedly by some of those folks that have those injuries, is their colleagues that have the invisible wounds, where you look at somebody and they appear to be physically okay, they don't have any disfiguration, they have all their arms and legs and so forth, but actually may be quite damaged on the inside. And the reason I'm in this space, unfortunately, if you read my bio, I've had a background, in military special operations, law enforcement for more than 30 years. I've also dual hatted as a paramedic for almost 45 years. So I've been able to, practice some street medicine for a period of time, and then rolled back into the Defense Department to work on the counter IED problem set. The IED was the weapon system that our adversaries used against us quite effectively, by the way, in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now Africa and other parts of the world. My background was organized crime, so really going after the human element after we realized that we had come up against a physics problem with up-armoring vehicles and robots and sensors to try to find the IEDs and to detonate them before they, hurt our forces. But the realization came that we had to go after the human element behind the IEDs, almost as if we were going after an organized crime element, or a gang, so to speak, and really trying to apply a business model behind those organizations to look for points of vulnerability, in their supply chain and their recruiting and their transportation, and specifically in their financing. I'm a follow the money guy, so that's how I got into the business. But really the heart of what changed my life, on a personal level, was that my son joined the Navy in 2006 and became a Navy SEAL also. And he had 10 years in service, where he was trained to he became a special operations medic. He initially deployed into Iraq, had 2 full deployments to Iraq, saw heavy combat in both those deployments, and then subsequently made 2 heavy deployments to Afghanistan, where he saw a lot of action. Came home from those deployments, and because of his experience and his reputation, started training up the other SEAL teams to go out to different parts of the world. And in that effort to train those warriors, he continued to be exposed to blast effects from our weapon systems, from the rockets, the mortars. He wasn't being exposed to the IEDs anymore like he was in combat, but certainly in the training environment was being subjected to those effects. we started seeing changes in him. He couldn't sleep. He said that, you know, when he did get to sleep, he'd have nightmares. Started to become more distant. You know, he was a fun kid, very intelligent, stopped smiling. His relationships started to, you know, split apart, and had bouts of anxiety, depression, started seeing changes in his cognitive functions, his eyesight, hearing, balance. He became forgetful, had memory issues, and you know, tried to get some help. And unfortunately, as he, you know, stepped up and said, look, I you know, need some help, the system, you know, directed him towards the low-hanging fruit. You know, initially it was to deal with the symptoms, where, you know, predominantly saw prescription after prescription being written for antidepressives and mood stabilizers and, you know, you name it. And then a few programs to try to deal with alcohol, because a lot of our men and women, you know, in this environment, unfortunately, you know, go to alcohol as a ready remedy to deal with their pain, to deal with their lack of sleep, to deal with their, you know, anxiety and their nightmares. And unfortunately, that's not a good mix for anything. On top of the drugs that were being prescribed, just kind of threw everything into a spiral. Got to a point where he could no longer operate, and subsequently honorably separated from the Navy. And the Navy basically said, look, you know, we've done all we can for him. You know, we've got other things that, you know, to do. And he would be in a better state of care with the Veterans Administration. So, you know, he needs to leave. And this separation from his tribe, so to speak, he loved being a SEAL, loved being, you know, with his teammates, and that separation was in of itself a deep wound that created a lot of, you know, second, third order consequence. He felt like as if he was abandoning his teammates, and suddenly cast away. And one of the things that keeps these teams together, and any team dynamic, is, you know, whether you're in business, whether you're in the military or law enforcement, is that, you know, your dedication to your teammates. You know, you don't want to let them down. You know, you want to be there for them. You want to hold your hand up. You know, you don't want to be a drag on anybody. And when that starts to occur, it can really erode somebody's self-confidence and sense of self-worth. He said to me one night, he said, Dad, I'm banged up inside. I'm not going to live to an old age. I've been through a lot, and you know, I just know that I'm not going to be around that long. And you know, as a father, I said, look, you know, I'm here for you. You know, we're going to get through this. We'll figure this out. But he, like a lot of veterans and first responders that are struggling, they want to know what's happening to them. And very often, you know, they don't get any answers. You know, the system fails to listen to them, first of all. They're quick to judge, quick to label. And those labels very often don't accurately portray that individual and what they're going through. Instead, it's more to justify their assessments and their actions. So a lot of these men and women have been cut away at a time when they really needed support. And unfortunately, on April 23rd of 2017, my son Ryan took his life. You know, I came home, found that he had in the basement of our home, he's wearing a SEAL Team 7 t-shirt and his red, white, and blue board shorts. Had illuminated a shadow box next to him with all his medals and ribbons. And he said, you know, all along, you know, consistently, something's wrong with my head, but nobody's listening. And I need to show them that our guys are hurting. And, they need to do something about it. And he said, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to donate my body for traumatic brain injury research, breacher syndrome research. And breachers are those technicians on the battlefield and in special operations and law enforcement that use, controlled explosives to go through doors and walls and so forth. So, you're subjected to a lot of blast. And after he passed, we followed up on his wish and donated, his brain for a research project that was looking into blast exposure. And 2 months later, they called us in and said, your son had a serious, level of microscopic brain injury that was undiagnosed, that was uniquely related to this blast exposure. So his, career in the military, where he was constantly being subjected to these low-level blast exposures, were having an cumulative effect. And, this very often has been confused lately with CTE that you hear about with our sports players, the subconcussive hits, the concussive hits that they take, and the chronic traumatic encephalopathy that has been highlighted through movies such as Concussion and so forth. It's a different pattern of injury when we talk about blast exposure, but they both share the same challenge, and that is they occur at the microscopic level, and we have no diagnostics to see it in a living person. It's only in the postmortem after death that we can qualify that they've had these levels of injury. So when this occurred, my son knew what he was doing when he did this. I didn't like what he did, and I didn't support what he did, but I've grown to understand why he did it. On his computer, we found just study after study about brain trauma, about the drugs that they were prescribing. Over 40 drugs in a period of 2 years, everything from potions, lotions, to creams, to high-end psychotropics that they had prescribed to him, but nothing, and no clinical diagnosis, as far as what was wrong with him. And he didn't even feel like he was in his own body, which you hear a lot from our veterans and first responders. It seems to be, the default is, a psychiatric mental health diagnosis, and then come the drugs for the symptomatic relief, instead of trying to peel back and find out what the real problem is. Well, the science now is starting to illuminate a greater body of evidence that there's a biological connection, damage that's occurring, again, like my son, at the microscopic level, that's, not being seen with our traditional imaging. There's no blood markers. The same exists with PTS. And my son knew what I would do with this. He kind of put me on this road, on this mission, and that's how I got connected with Cohen Veterans Bioscience. And I'll pass this over to Chantel for, in a second, but, I needed to find an organization that was going to pursue this and pursue this like a dog on a bone, and find out what was going on, what was underlying, the challenges associated with these invisible wounds, which we've characterized as post-traumatic stress. It's a complex rubric of that. Moral injury, which we don't talk about. We raise our kids to value human life, to respect each other, and follow the rule of law. But then, whether they're military or first responders, we project them into situations where that's not exactly how life goes. And then they come home burdened with these conflicts, and very often back to a society that's very judgmental, and they don't feel like they can talk about it in an open forum, which again kind of keeps all that inside them like little Pac-Man chewing away. And so these invisible wounds really need to be explored. We need to understand what's going on, as we would call the mechanisms of injury, so that then we can then characterize the disease process, the injury process, and hopefully start to prevent it on the front end. Diagnose it early in its evolution, so it doesn't get to a catastrophic point where people get into dark places, they lose hope, and bad things happen. And that we can continually monitor their environments to try to buy down this risk. Cohen Veterans Bioscience was a platform that I saw immediately was geared to trying to find out these answers without an agenda, in an unbiased way, employing, the best of methodologies to promote, to leverage the science to uncover what's going on and potentially paint a path for us forward so we can do this responsibly and live up to what we've guaranteed these men and women, and that is that we would take care of them no matter what. So with that, let me roll over to Chantel and then probably take some questions from you all.
Thanks, guys. Frank and I are kindred spirits in many ways. We sort of both turned tragedy into a life's calling, I think, to do something better. I myself was a first responder. I was a paramedic for a number of years. My partner was a former Marine medic. I knew he was struggling. I think a lot of first responders are struggling. And, we went to a pretty horrific call one night, and I knew he wasn't okay when he went home, but I honestly never foresaw that he would take his own life. And, went to his house the next day and found him after he had taken his life. And it was the wake-up call, I think, that I needed to sort of try to deal with my own PTSD that was going on. And so I did what every normal person does and went to graduate school to become a PhD in neuroscience. I came to Cohen Veterans Bioscience in a similar way. I was really trying to understand why nobody was really looking at this research in a very objective way. We look at PTSD like many other mental health conditions, and we ask people to describe their symptoms and then they get a diagnosis. We don't ever objectively have a way to diagnose individuals, yet we know really well that there is a lot of science that says when you experience trauma, and it's repeated trauma and it's high stress situations like combat veterans, first responders, the underlying structure and function of the brain dramatically changes. And we can see that on different types of imaging. When we have somebody who's exposed to blast injury at low levels, we can see changes in the brain. And we need to be able to objectively diagnose people so that not only do we get them to a diagnosis faster, because for most people, they're spending 10, 15 years just trying to figure out what's wrong with them, stumbling and just trying to survive through, knowing there's something wrong with my brain, but nobody's can really catch it. And that's often because symptom trajectories that lead to a diagnosis through a questionnaire don't always emerge all at the same time. So when you have a diagnosis of PTSD, sometimes you might be having re-experiencing symptoms, sometimes you might be having intrusive thoughts, but there's often cases where those are not always coming together at the same time where you can get a diagnosis, and it sort of takes a crisis to get you into a diagnosis. We want to get people to a diagnosis much faster, much more objectively, and then we want to get people to the right treatment. So there's a lot of treatments out there for PTSD. There's a lot of treatments out there for TBI. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great. But just like somebody who's diagnosed with cancer, we wouldn't go to them and say, well, let's just keep trying things until it works. We've gotten to a point in cancer where we can tell you everything about your cancer based on your genetics, your imaging, your blood biomarkers, and then we match you to the right treatment. We should be able to do the same thing with mental health conditions. And that's really the essential goal of our organization, is to do the research in such a way that we get better diagnostics, faster diagnostics, and better people on a better treatment path much faster. And so we have a lot of our programs are about, just that, increasing the diagnostics in this space, getting away from kind of the past of using a questionnaire and relying on somebody to sort of stumble into a mental health office to get a diagnosis. we're going to get you diagnosed faster. And then we want to look at whether or not we can predict, are you going to respond to psychotherapy? Are you going to respond to this medication? Are you going to respond to exposure therapy? And how can we get you into the right treatment path, so that you hopefully come out on the other end much faster? I think a lot of us think of these conditions as lifelong experiences that will shape the trajectory of your life. But I think there's still a way that we can get individuals to a much better place where they build resiliency, they build skills, they learn how to deal with sort of all the symptomology that comes with all of these conditions. And they really get to a place where they're much more comfortable with where they are, and approach it more as dealing with kind of a chronic illness, and where it's just a manageable condition that they have. And that's really a lot of our goal of both our research programs and our advocacy programs. And a lot of it is centered on military and first responders, just because they have, in the last 20 years in particular, just disproportionately borne the brunt of what we've asked them to do. And, honestly, as Frank said, we're just not really taking care of them in the right way that we should be, and really honoring their service by honoring what their experiences have led to after service. I think you're on mute, Frank.
Frank.
Yeah, probably
Yep.
a good thing. But, and Chantal said, we're kind of, you can't be everything to everybody, but we're dialing in with a focus on the military and first responders. This science will illuminate and cross deck over to other bases of knowledge that are working on, or efforts that are working on Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. What we're trying to do is really follow a roadmap for the science that is can be easily followed, but yet puts discipline into how we do the science and the accountability for those efforts. And we've told some, obviously some, there's an emotional side to this and a personal side to this, but there's great hope on the horizon as far as, what we're starting to see. This is, I think it's going to be disruptive. Not everybody's going to, like what they hear, but that's what science does. It's supposed to challenge our assumptions. It's supposed to force us to think about things differently. And in Ryan's memory, for me, that's what drives me forward. I mean, we are now working on the policy level with Congress to be a trusted agent for them. And we work both sides of the aisle. This isn't, gravitates to one party or the other. I mean, this goes right down the middle where we're trying to help them understand a complex subject. And I was a former U.S. Senate Sergeant at Arms for almost 4 years, and it was a different place to operate up there. It was like herding cats and dogs. Probably the greatest concentration of ADD in the world. You got to hold their attention. You don't have a long time to kind of get your point across. And so organizations like, CVB have become trusted, help them, big part of what we do up there is to educate them, to help shape policy that will, drive the research and provide a level of accountability for results, as far as how taxpayer dollars are being spent, and also that there's a sense of direction so that we can achieve the results that we hope to achieve in the next couple of years. It's not because we lack intellectual capability or capacity. It's we often suffer, a lack of unity and a lack of data sharing, which, all come back to relationships. And so, our efforts are to really be, that unbiased, full spectrum, integrator, broker of relationships, to have those honest discussions. And at times they're tough because you're challenging maybe the way somebody has conducted their practice, for the last 20 years, and, but that's what it's all about. You got to be able to park your ego at the door and then, accept that, there may be things that you didn't consider and could help explain why, in some cases, this is tough, but yet hopefully illuminate that path forward so we get the help to the men and women who need it.
Fantastic. Jumping in right there. As then myself, who Marine combat vet, and I think 90% of my my actual like everything from me in the veteran to VA, I think it's 60% is that they have me for PTSD, and man, they don't have a whole heck of a lot of interest in figuring out anybody that any guys I know. It's usually the same question: what pills would you like? So that is that's the answer. That's, like I said, I know, Frank, that is something you hear all the time. So just go, I thought there was supposed to be something more to this, and the answer doesn't really seem to be that. It's, all right, you did your time, it's time for you to go. Door's over there. All right, and there you are. So myself, I pushed a lot of fellow veterans, combat vets, into doing what they can with counselors, things of that nature. But this is why we have these kinds of speakers, is because of exactly this. It's not, people know that there is as you said, invisible wounds that us veterans have, but they just go, oh, that's a thing that happens, and that's sad. Like, there's never much further than that. So to see someone like yourself and Chantel being out there advocating on behalf of is just absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, I doubt it's just the three of us in this call, but that we probably all know somebody, for the most part, that had a very similar unfortunate end to the folks that your family, Chantel, same thing. It's knowing that these are rough, and but you're out there and you're doing something, and what better way than how you're doing it to be able to honor those people. So with that, I'm very thankful. I'm sure that was just more of a ramble. I'm sure if I know anything about Raymond, he's got a question for you.
I do, for both, Frank. Let me preface it first. I enlisted in 1975, and then I became a policeman in 1980 and served 25 years in Los Angeles Police Department during the cocaine wars. And I've been saying this for a long time, and I think I see this shift in you. If something happens to you and it changes you, you have been injured. You don't have a disorder. You were injured. And there seems to be less of a stigma to having been injured. I can't tell you how many policemen I've said to, this was done to you. You were injured by what happened. This is not this. I think removing the stigma, and that's what I'm hearing from you is, and also from from Chantel, is there's changes to the brain. That means it happened to you. And yes, I'm thrilled to hear this. Is that removing the stigma? Is that a big part of this?
Yeah. Again, there's been stigma around suicide. There's stigma around, the comorbidities that, kind of, play a role here. You're absolutely right. When I talk to, military and first responders, I tell them exactly what you just said. You very well may be injured. You're not crazy. You may be injured because of what we've asked you to do. And, it's not that anybody intended, you any harm. And I don't think there's any malice in the fact that, maybe we didn't respond effectively. It's just that, that old term, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so you gravitate to what you know, even though it may be wrong. Have you ever heard the term trying to do the right thing for the right reason, all the wrong way? And so we're kind of in that that space. And, you know, bureaucracies hate to admit that they're wrong, or that they're getting something wrong, and they'll do whatever they can to protect the flagpole. I mean, have I been guilty of doing that as an organizational leader? Yeah. But I think that the one gift that my son gave me was, and I'm internally grateful. And you look back and you say, you know, how, you know, what is the logic in what happened here? And I will tell you that he opened up my eyes. I became a lot more receptive to understanding other perspectives. And that's hard, you know, as a cop, you know, special operator and all, you build up an armor. You know, you have to find a way to insulate yourself, to be able to you know, pack away this stuff. Otherwise, you know, you wouldn't make it through the day. And for what's right or wrong, you know, we didn't deal with those traumas at the time that we were experiencing them. And, you know, they don't go away. They just come back at some time in your life when you least expect it, usually driven by something that, you know, kind of really causes the house of cards to collapse. And there's no shame in asking for help. I mean, we all wrestle with problems and challenges. And so we're trying to turn the argument or the discussion now into resiliency, you know, post-traumatic growth. Let it be a driver to, you know, gain strength, to make you stronger and more resilient to, you know, the challenges. I mean, we all have seen change. I mean, everyone I'm looking at here on the screen here, I mean, nobody he just hit the deck, you know, and jumped out of diapers. I mean, we've been around for a while. So we've seen a lot of changes in society and life. And we've had to bob and weave, and we just went through this whole COVID business. And I'm confident we're going to find the answers to, you know, the PTS, TBI, you know, the invisible wounds. But we can't take our eye off the ball. It's not going away. And my fear is, you know, after this 20 plus years of persistent conflict, we haven't seen the worst yet. We don't know how this is going to track in the long term because we haven't had the research that's given us the insight into how this progresses. You know, to Chantel's, you know, point, you know, we're starting to see some signals now that are taking us in new directions. But, you know, it's going to be in organizations like, you know, CVB that do that. And what a great, too bad we can't line up the whole team here of these men and women. They're just, a lot of them are just, you know, very young, you know, they've got nuclear cells for, you know, drivers, and they've got a tremendous thirst and appetite for knowledge and peeling this back. But almost every one of them in the organization has some connection to a military veteran, a first responder, or somebody that's taken their life, and they want to find the answers. So I'm going to get off the transmit button here, and subject to your questions. But you know, you're spot on in your assessment that, you know, they're injured, and we need to treat them like that.
Well, thank you very much. I should open the forum to anyone else who has a question. Raymond, you have one more. You have that face.
No, we're Don, we're out of, unfortunately, what I'd like to say to Frank and to Chantel is, because we're running out of time, can you give us in 60 seconds, and either of you can handle this, what can we do as a group? And then different question, what should we do as individuals?
Okay, before we answer that question, we did have a hand up, and let's see if we can take that on, and we'll hit that question.
Thank you so much. I want to thank both of you for bringing this to light and sharing your personal experiences. But there were something, not necessarily a question, but just a reminder in that no matter what level we are either serving in, whether it's our community or in the military or professionally as law enforcement, medical, etc., education is the key.
Yep.
Right? And as we learn more about how our brains work, it helps us as civilians to understand that there could be something else going on, and we don't know the other person's struggle when we encounter someone. And so I think grace goes a long way.
You're absolutely right. You know, many of these men and women spend a lot of energy. They put on a mask,
Mhm.
and you know they look like they're okay, but you just don't realize what they're dealing with on the inside, and it sucks up a lot of energy. They get exhausted, and sometimes that takes them to dark places.
I
So
didn't realize it with my dad until I was an adult.
yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. So how can you help? One, you hit the nail on the head. Education, help us get the word out. You know, help us, connect to other people where we can share some of this. It is a big thing. Chantel, what are your thoughts? I mean, I think the education piece is a huge part of the challenge here. I mean, obviously we're dealing with it every day up on the Hill and other places, trying to affect policy and research financing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, being able to, if there's, anything that we can send you to help send out to your community to be able to educate people on not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. You hit the nail on the head when you say stigma. Like, we want people to understand that biological basis really changes your perspective towards what you're facing. When you think about it as an injury, you think about it as more of a disease state than you think about as the antiquated notion, which we've been taught to understand, which is that it's all in your head. That's just doesn't sit well with most people, and I understand that. And so, educating people is really a lot of what we are wanting to do. And, we want people to be interested and follow along with our research, help support the research that we're doing, help support the advocacy efforts that we're doing. We're always looking for people with lived experience that, want to tell their story or want to share that, whether that's just adding to the education side of it or, really helping to educate people up on the Hill when we're doing advocacy. So I think there's lots of ways, we can send you kind of links to our website to send out. And we do try to put a lot of really objective information on there so that people can kind of help navigate that journey whether they have TBI or PTSD.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Chantel and Frank. We really do appreciate you. As Raymond did point out earlier, we are up against a wall. So I thank you so much. We're glad you came out, and if you're more than welcome to stay on with us. But yes, do send us the literature on that, so that way we can kick it back out to people and let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for your time and all your interest, and join our posse to get the word out. We'll all ride together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So then with that said, I'm going to jump into our committee reports. And
I'm going to drop off.
Of course, you great night. Raymond, UFC dinner.
We'll have our first committee meeting on March 28th. We did get a phone call from a Marine Corps League detachment in Upland, and it turns out that Damien High School, their jazz band owes the Marine Corps League a favor. I guess they donated some money, and so they are going to arrange for them to be our entertainment during dinner. And so we'll have a jazz band for dinner, and it's not going to cost us a dime. That Marine Corps League will also be present with a booth at our food drive, along with the American Legion post, and they sent us a check for $500 on top of that. We also got a check for $1,000 from a VFW post just the other day. And Senator Rubio will be there on Saturday, March 9th, and she sent us a check for $150. So far, we've got nearly $2,600 in donations. And March 2nd is baseball kickoff, and Mike Wallace will be there. Rita, maybe you could tell us quickly what goes on March 2nd. Oh, gotta unmute. Can you unmute?
I'm muted there, Margaret.
There we go. So it's San Dimas Little League. We're starting up opening day. We have about 126 kids playing, so we'll probably have over 1,000 people in attendance. Obviously, we have city dignitaries. We have some, Bonita School Board dignitaries. And I know Mike, and I'm not sure who else is going to be there with the booth. I know we're going to come out with a flyer where, and I think I'll have Nick as president send out an email saying, hey, just a reminder, we're still accepting food. You guys will be there with a box or two, and any canned goods will be accepted at Little League.
Excellent. So it will be Mike Wallace. Anyone who'd like to join him Saturday, March 2nd, be there by 0700 hours. The thing begins at 8 and it gets crowded real fast. So he could use help on March 2nd. And then we have the kickoff party for the actual food drive on March 7th. That's in your shop there at High Point. What time does that start, Dom?
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is the big kickoff. And I do recommend giving here. We open at 4 that day, but I would definitely recommend giving here maybe earlier than 5 because we have a wedding something rehearsal dinner in the back. 50 something people, and I bring that up because the lady that's getting married is a Coastie also, and I informed her that what we would be doing that day, and she's ecstatic. So there'll be quite a few people here, but then tack on the fact that they're also going to be donating to the food drive. They were supposed to reach out to Raymond, I don't know if that ever happened, but she does have your information. So, and so does the husband to be, I guess. With that said, yeah, you've got 50 plus for that, and then our actual food drive at 5 o'clock kicking off. So that'll be fun.
We were going to put the Easy Up, the Rotary Easy Up in front. What time should I get there to kind of try to save a couple of parking spaces?
I'll block it off. Don't even worry about that. What do you want? 2 spots?
Yeah, 2 spots for the Easy Up. It's a 10 by 10, and we'll bring a table and we'll have stuff to transport stuff away. So we thought we'd do it out front. That way it gives a social area inside and the back portion also.
Fantastic. Yeah. So no, well, I'll have that. That won't, you don't have to worry about that at all. I'll knock that out in the morning. So everything will be lined up, and then there'll be the food vendor, so on and so forth. So we'll have that party, this party, and everything happening that day, which is the 7th. And then we're kicking, then the big day is March 9th on that Saturday. And that starts at, I believe, 9 a.m. Correct?
Yeah. So it's from 9 to 3. We'll be there about 7 a.m. to set up. We're going to have the American Legion, the Kelly County Sheriffs, Rotary, the Masons, DeMolay, Young Marines, Marine Corps League, the San Dimas Laverne Women's Club, and the Diamond Bar Women's Club, all with like a spread of booths and banners along the back as we have people drive up. We have over probably 80 volunteers going to be there that day. So it's pretty exciting. Lastly, the transportation day is on the 11th. And I encourage anyone who's not gone with us out to the base when we deliver the food. That's a trip worth making.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. Also, so you know, I did an interview with the Marine Corps League for this area and Covina's Masonic Lodge. Did interviews with them that way, just to drum up even more business. But yeah, if you haven't gone, it's a great time. We meet at the lodge, we load everything up, we have a semi, we head on out there. I don't know if we have sheriffs this year, but we have in the past. We head on out, it's a bit of a drive. And then you get to see lovely 29, or as we called it, 29 stumps when I was there. You get to see all the young Marines come out and offload everything, get to kind of see what they have. You get an idea of the food pantry, you get to see how much food is truly going to affect all these people. The grocery list that they have. You have lunch with these, usually lunch is provided with, I think it's Subway. And you get to just kind of experience, like, these aren't necessarily, they could be the Marines that would be receiving food, but you get to see how young these kids really are, and you really remember, Jesus, I was 17 when I was there, kind of thing. So it's absolutely worth it. It's earlier a day, a long day, but it's a day worth doing. With that, Raymond, calendar, hit it.
Let me bring it up here. Here we go. So your next meeting for Rotary during the Noon Club will be on March 6th. It'll be a lady who was talking about a project with Ukrainian children. And then in the evening, we'll have Amanda Huffman. She's a former airman, and she's written a book, A Girl's Guide to the Military. We also have James Zenner. He's the director of LA County Department of Military Veterans Affairs. He'll be here on April 3rd. I'm still working on fleshing out the rest of the year, but we'll have great speakers like we had today. Pass the word. That's all.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then I'm just gonna pick on Glenn to do the 4-way test because I can. Because Glenn's been so quiet that I have to pick on him.
Only if somebody puts it up on screen.
I think
working. I'm
Raymond might be
working.
on it.
I'm
Working
working on it.
hard.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
We'll tap dance around.
There we
Glenn,
go.
one of these days you're gonna come out with us, by the way, 29 bombs. I know you're there to help set up or and help get everything out there, but one of these days I'm gonna drag you out there with us.
Yeah, I've been there before you were born.
Fair enough. Glenn, when you're ready.
There you go.
The Rotary 4-way test is a test that you should apply to your life and dealings with others to see that things are the way they should be. Of the things we say or do, we should ask ourselves, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And if it's not, why are you doing it?
Fine point, Glenn. Thank you. And with that said, we've already, I guess, ran quite a bit. Thank you so much to everyone. I do look forward to seeing you guys out there. I have pimped out constantly that our food cake drive is kicking off. I'm excited about it. I can't wait for the kickoff day actually, because I'm really excited to see what this wedding rehearsal dinner is going to look like, and then have everybody come in. We had quite the turnout last year of people bringing in food. So the bride to be is rather ecstatic about it. So I can't wait. So with that, I've stolen so much of your time. Let's talk to you guys soon. Until then, guys have a great night.